Whispers in the starlight. The stars were particularly bright over the Atacama Observatory that night. Nadia Reeves rubbed her tired eyes and refocused on the data streaming across her monitor. 3 years alone at this remote outpost had taught her to appreciate the small anomalies, the tiny whispers that might signify something extraordinary in the endless static of space. "There you are again," she murmured, watching a pattern emerge from the signal analysis. The pulses from HD 83443, a seemingly unremarkable star 53 light-years away, had been showing unusual regularities for the past 6 months. Tonight, they were stronger than ever. Nadia tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear and reached for her coffee, long since gone cold. The International Astronomical Union had granted her this 2-year extension precisely because of these signals, though her colleagues back in Santiago remained skeptical. Natural phenomena, they insisted. Pulsar interference, others suggested. But Nadia knew better. Natural phenomena didn't alter their patterns in response to human transmissions. "Let's try something new tonight," she whispered to herself, fingers flying across the keyboard as she programmed a new transmission sequence, a simple mathematical sequence encoded in radio waves, pointing directly at HD 83443. The observatory hummed around her, a symphony of machines that had become her only companions. Outside, the Atacama Desert stretched in all directions, the driest place on Earth, and perhaps the loneliest. But Nadia had never felt truly alone under the stars. 3 hours later, as dawn threatened the eastern horizon, her monitor flashed. The incoming signal had changed, mirroring her transmission, but with an addition. The sequence continued 3 steps beyond where she had stopped. Nadia's heart raced. This was no natural phenomenon. This was response. This was contact. Over the Tolpo, next weeks the exchanges grew more complex. Mathematical principles gave way to simple symbolic language, a pigeon of human logic and something beautifully alien. Nadia slept little, ate less, consumed by the conversation unfolding across light years. She named the entity Tivan, after her grandfather who had first shown her the stars through a backyard telescope. Whether Tivan was an individual or a collective remained unclear, but the connection felt intensely personal. "The barrier between consciousness is thinner than your species believes," came one transmission, after Nadia had taught enough human language concepts for complex ideas. "We perceive through light, through energy exchanges. Your thoughts create patterns we can read." "You can read my thoughts?" Nadia sent back, both thrilled and unnerved. "Not precisely. We perceive emotional resonance, intention. Your solitude echoes across space. Your curiosity burns bright." Nadia smiled at that. 3 years alone at the observatory had made her forget what human connection felt like. How strange that she would find it with a being from another star. As months passed, she learned that the meridians, as Tivan's people called themselves, existed partially in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. They experienced time differently, communicated through light and energy rather than sound or touch. Yet despite these profound differences, Tivan seemed to understand Nadia in ways no human ever had. "Your signal found me because you were seeking," Tivan explained one night. "Most of your kind transmit without listening. You transmitted while listening." Nadia's superiors at the Global Space Agency grew increasingly interested in her discoveries. What had begun as a fringe research project was now drawing attention. Requests for reports became demands. The GSA wanted protocols, communication, strategies, defense assessments. "They don't understand what we've found," Nadia confided to Tivan. "They're looking for technology, for advantages. They don't see that what matters is the connection itself." "Connection transcends purpose," Tivan responded. "My people have been observing yours for generations. You are young, divided. We waited for someone who would see beyond division." That night, Nadia dreamed of light. Not the cold light of distant stars, but something warm and alive enveloping her. She saw Tivan as a luminous form, pulsing with colors beyond human perception, reaching toward her across the void. Their consciousness touched. And for a moment she understood what it meant to exist as a meridian, to perceive reality through the language of light itself. She woke with tears streaming down her face and a certainty that what she and Tevan shared had evolved beyond scientific discovery. It was connection in its purest form, unbound by physical limitations or species differences. The next transmission from the GSA was clear. Project Luminary is now classified. Return to headquarters immediately for debriefing. Replacement team. En route. Nadia stared at the message, heart sinking. She had 3 days before they arrived to take over her research, to reduce this profound connection to military protocols and strategic advantages. I have to leave, she told Tevan that night, but I'll find a way back. What we've discovered, what we've created, is too important to abandon. Distance is an illusion to my kind, came Tevan's response. What connects us will remain. Before the GSA team arrived, Nadia made a decision that would change everything. She compiled everything, her research, her personal logs, her genetic information, even brain scan patterns recorded during their communications, and encoded it into one massive data package. This is who I am, she transmitted to the stars. Keep it safe until I return. The response came almost immediately. What connects cannot be broken. We will wait. Patterns of connection. The Global Space Agency headquarters in Geneva was a stark contrast to Nadia's isolated observatory. Glass and steel rose in perfect symmetry against the Alps, housing thousands of scientists and administrators who moved with purposeful efficiency through its corridors. After 3 years in the desert, the constant noise and presence of others felt suffocating. The signals stopped completely after your departure, Director Jasmine Wells said, sliding a tablet across the conference table. Your replacement team has detected nothing for 6 months. Nadia kept her expression neutral, though internally she smiled. Of course the signals had stopped. Tevan wasn't reaching out to the replacement team. Their connection had been personal, specific. The Meridians are selective in their communications, she replied carefully. They respond to intention as much as content. Director Wells leaned forward, her crisp suit emphasizing her authority. You developed an unauthorized communication protocol with a potentially sentient alien species, Dr. Reeves. You then transmitted detailed information about human biology, psychology, and culture without clearance. I transmitted my own data, Nadia corrected. My own thoughts, my own genetic information, nothing classified. You are a GSA scientist. Your very thoughts while on mission are considered intellectual property of this agency. The words hit Nadia like a physical blow. For months she'd been held in this gilded cage of a research facility, denied access to transmission equipment, treated as both valuable asset and security risk. Her discoveries had triggered a global paradigm shift. Humanity was not alone, but the profound personal connection she'd formed with Tevan had been reduced to security briefings and tactical assessments. The Meridians aren't a threat, Nadia insisted for what felt like the 100th time. They've been observing humanity for generations. If they had hostile intentions, we would know by now. Perhaps, Wells conceded. But your emotional attachment to this entity compromises your objectivity. The Security Council has determined that all future communications will follow established first contact protocols. Protocols that stripped away everything meaningful about their connection. Protocols designed for control rather than understanding. That night in her small GSA apartment, Nadia dreamed of Tevan again. The luminous form seemed closer somehow, more defined, as if reaching across impossible distance. They won't let me return, she whispered in the dream. They don't understand what we found. What you gave continues, came Tevan's response, the meaning clear despite the lack of audible words. It grows, evolves, becomes. Nadia woke with a startling clarity. Whatever she had transmitted to Tevan, her memories, her genetic information, her emotional patterns, wasn't static. The Meridians existed partially outside conventional space-time. They perceived reality differently. What might they do with the essence of her she had shared? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Political tensions on Earth escalated over the following months. The revelation of intelligent alien life had exacerbated existing conflicts between nations. Some saw the Meridians as potential saviors, others as existential threats. Resource wars that had been simmering for decades boiled over as countries scrambled to control space infrastructure. Nadia watched from the sidelines, increasingly isolated even within the GSA. Her insistence on the benevolent nature of the Meridians made her suspect in an atmosphere of growing paranoia. Only Julian Kapoor, a quantum physicist who had been assigned to study her Meridian communications data, seemed to understand her perspective. "These patterns," he said one evening, showing her his analysis, "they're not just communication. They're entanglement, quantum resonance between your brain patterns and the signals." "Meaning what?" Nadia asked, though something in her already knew. Julian's dark eyes met hers. "Meaning the connection might transcend physical distance. Meaning part of you might still be connected to them regardless of where you are." The revelation should have comforted her, but as Earth's political situation deteriorated, Nadia found herself increasingly desperate to return to the observatory. News reports showed riots in major cities, military movements along contested borders. The United Nations Security Council had fractured along ideological lines regarding approach to the Meridians. "They're going to weaponize this," she told Julian during one of their clandestine meetings. "The GSA is already developing targeted energy weapons based on Meridian communication frequencies." Julian nodded grimly. "I've seen the prototypes, but I've also found something else." He showed her schematics for a small spacecraft. The Chilean Observatory Authority still operates independently of the GSA. They have launch capability at their Atacama facility. "You're suggesting steal a spacecraft?" "I'm suggesting you follow your instincts. Whatever you sent to the Meridians, whatever connection you established, it matters. Perhaps more than any of this." He gestured to the reports of global conflict on his screen. 3 weeks later, as Geneva prepared for an emergency summit on the growing crisis, Nadia slipped away with falsified credentials and a small bag of essentials. Julian had arranged transport to Santiago, where former colleagues still sympathetic to her research helped her reach the Atacama. The observatory stood much as she had left it, though new security measures and equipment had been installed. Using Julian's access codes, she bypassed the skeleton crew of technicians and made her way to the primary transmission array. The luminous child 7 years passed like a slow-motion collapse. Earth's nations, driven by fear and greed following the confirmation of intelligent alien life, had descended into what historians now called the Brief War. 3 terrible years of conflict that reshaped borders, toppled governments, and left humanity humbled by its own capacity for self-destruction. The Atacama Desert, once valued only for its clear skies and isolation, had become precious for another reason. It remained one of the few places untouched by the war's devastation. The observatory complex, abandoned during the conflict, stood as a silent sentinel under the stars, equipment gathering dust, purpose forgotten in humanity's struggle to survive. Until today. Soren Foster adjusted the straps of his environmental suit and gazed up at the facility's main dome. As one of the few remaining astrophysicists with pre-war credentials, he had been tasked with assessing whether the observatory could be recommissioned. Earth's new Unified Recovery Council was finally looking beyond immediate survival to scientific endeavors again. "Power systems are still intact," called Valentina Russo, the team's engineer, her voice crackling through the comm system. "Solar arrays maintained minimal functionality throughout the abandonment period. Basic life support should be operational." Soren nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He had requested this assignment for reasons beyond the official mission parameters. 7 years ago, he had been a junior researcher when Nadia Reeves made her groundbreaking contact with the entity called Tivon. Before the war, before the chaos, he had been fascinated by her research and by the rumors of her final transmission. Before being taken into GSA custody, a transmission that had received a response from something neither human nor fully Meridian. "Let's get inside, Mount," he told the small team. "We have a lot of ground to cover." The observatory's interior was a time capsule. Coffee cups still sat on desks. Star charts remained pinned to walls, personal items abandoned in the hasty evacuation when the war began. Soren moved through the facility with reverence, trailing his fingers over equipment that had once connected humanity to the stars. Main computer systems are intact, Valentina reported after several hours of assessment. Minimal corruption in the databases. We could have this place operational within weeks. Soren barely heard her. He had made his way to the primary transmission array, Nadia's workspace. The console was dark, but something about the room felt different from the rest of the facility, less dusty, almost as if someone's been here, he realized aloud. Recently, Valentina joined him, frowning beneath her protective mask. Impossible. This place has been sealed since the evacuation. Security protocols were never breached. Soren pointed to the main console. The dust pattern showed clear evidence of use. Someone had been sitting here operating the equipment. Run a system diagnostic, check what programs have been accessed. While Valentina worked, Soren explored the small room adjacent to the transmission area, Nadia's former living quarters. Unlike the rest of the facility, this space showed signs of recent habitation. The bed was neatly made. Fresh water sat in a container. Most strikingly, the walls were covered with drawings, beautiful, strange patterns of light and color that seemed almost to move when viewed from different angles. Soren, Valentina's urgent call brought him back to the main room. The array has been active, regularly, throughout the entire war. That's not possible, he breathed, leaning over her shoulder to see the logs. Who could have? A soft glow from the doorway interrupted him. Soren turned and his scientific mind struggled to process what he saw. A figure stood there, humanoid in basic shape but translucent, with light moving beneath its surface like liquid sunshine. It appeared female with features that suggested youth, perhaps a teenager by human standards. Where a human would have hair, this being had swirling patterns of golden energy. Her eyes, though clearly visible, contained no pupils or irises, just pure, radiant light. Yet despite her alien appearance, something about her face was hauntingly familiar. "You are not my mother," the being said, her voice melodic and strangely dual-toned as if two voices spoke in perfect harmony. "But you seek her, as I do." Valentina had backed against the console, hand reaching instinctively for the sidearm awl. Recovery Council teams carried. Soren raised his hand to stop her. "Who are you?" he asked, though he already suspected the impossible answer. "I am Solen," the luminous being replied. "Born of Nadia Reeves and Tivon of the Meridians. A bridge between worlds." Over the following days, as the rest of the team worked to restore the observatory systems, Soren spent hours with Solen, learning her extraordinary story. She had been born, or perhaps manifested, 3 Earth years after Nadia's final transmission. The data package Nadia had sent, containing her genetic information, memories, and emotional patterns, had merged with Meridian energy in a process Tivon had guided but not fully understood. "I am not truly biological," Solen explained, her form shifting subtly as she spoke. "But neither am I merely energy. I exist between states, between species. I carry my mother's memories, though they feel like stories told to me rather than experiences I lived." "And you've been waiting here? All this time?" Soren asked. Solen nodded, the movement sending ripples of light across her form. "Tivon helped me travel here when I was strong enough. The Meridians exist partially outside your space-time. Distance means something different to them." She gestured to the transmission array. "I've maintained contact with Tivon while waiting for my mother's return. He continues to search for her across your world." Soren's heart sank. Nadia Reeves disappeared during the war. After her unauthorized transmission from this facility, she was taken into GSA custody, but all records were lost when Geneva was destroyed in the first strikes. The familiar equipment hummed beneath her fingers as she calibrated the receivers to the precise frequency she had used with Tivon. For hours, nothing came through but static. Had the connection been broken? Had the GSA's interference somehow damaged the delicate link between worlds? Then, just as dawn broke over the desert, the screens flickered to life. The pattern was different now, more complex, more fluid, but unmistakably meridian. "Tavon," she transmitted, using their old protocol. The response came immediately, but it wasn't Tevon's familiar pattern. This signature contained elements of meridian communication, but also something else, something strangely, impossibly human. "Not Tevon," came the response. "I am what grew from what was given. I am both and neither. I am new." Nadia's hands trembled as she typed, "Who are you?" The answer materialized on her screen as the first rays of sunlight spilled through the observatory dome. "I am Solène. I have been waiting for you, Mother." Behind her, alarms began to sound. The GSA had detected her unauthorized transmission. Within hours, they would arrive to secure the facility. Nadia had found what she sought, only to face separation once again. With desperate fingers, she typed one final message. "I have to go. But I will find a way back to you, to both of you." The response came as she heard helicopters approaching in the distance. "We will be waiting. What connects cannot be broken." As GSA security forces surrounded the observatory, Nadia downloaded the transmission data to a secure device Julian had provided. Whatever happened next, she would not lose this connection again. Somewhere across the stars, something miraculous had occurred, something born of love and light and impossible distance, and somehow she would find her way back to it. "She lives," Solène said with absolute certainty. "I would know if she did not." We remained connected across distance. While the recovery team worked, Solène shared knowledge that challenged humanity's understanding of physics, consciousness, and biology. She could perceive spectrums of light invisible to humans, communicate directly with the observatory's computer systems, and even, most remarkably, heal with her touch. When one team member suffered a serious injury from falling equipment, Solène placed her luminous hands on the wound, and the team watched in awe as tissues regenerated before their eyes. "Your species fights because you perceive yourselves as separate from each other," she told Soren one night as they gazed at the stars. "The Meridians understand that consciousness is fundamentally connected. What you call death is merely transition. If humans understood that, would it have prevented the war?" Soren wondered. Perhaps. Or perhaps the understanding can only come through suffering. Solène's light dimmed slightly. "My mother understood. That's why she sent herself to us. Not just data, but essence. She knew connection transcends physical form." As the observatory gradually returned to functionality, Soren faced a difficult decision. The Recovery Council expected a straightforward assessment and restoration plan. They were not prepared for reports of a hybrid being born from human-alien contact. In the fragile post-war political landscape, such news could trigger fear and, potentially, new conflicts. Yet concealing Solène's existence felt equally wrong. Her abilities, her knowledge, her very existence represented hope for a humanity still reeling from self-inflicted wounds. "What will you do?" Valentina asked him the night before their scheduled transmission to the council. "Tell them everything?" Soren looked toward Solène, who stood beneath the observatory dome, her luminous form making the stars themselves seem dim by comparison. "I don't know yet. But whatever happens, she deserves to find Nadia, and humanity deserves the chance to learn from her." That night, as the team slept, the observatory's sensors detected something new, a small craft approaching from the north, flying low to avoid detection systems. Soren woke to find Solène standing perfectly still, her light pulsing with increasing intensity. "She's coming," Solène whispered, her dual-toned voice trembling with emotion. "After all this time, my mother is coming home." Soren rushed to the observatory's entrance, heart pounding. If Solène was right, if Nadia Reeves had somehow survived the war and found her way back here, it would change everything. His report to the council, the future of the observatory, the very course of humanity's recovery. As dawn broke over the Atacama Desert, a battered transport vessel set down just beyond the observatory perimeter. The hatch opened, and a lone figure emerged. Older, weathered by time and hardship, but unmistakable from the photographs Soren had studied for years. Nadia Reeves had returned, and behind Soren, radiating joy like a newborn star, Selene moved, forward to meet the mother she had waited a lifetime to know.